Welcome to Ghost Carrier, our 15-part alternative history audio series about a world where America lost the Pacific War. This is the tale of a doomed aircraft carrier and its crew, stranded in the vast Pacific by a supernatural twist of fate. This story has been adapted from my book, Ghost Carrier. You can purchase the full version in paperback, Kindle, or audiobook from the links in this episode's description. I'm Robert Child, and episode 13 will begin in a moment. Summer is a great time for catching up on military history, and my book about the 7 Black Medal of Honor recipients of World War II, Immortal Valor, has just been released in paperback. Immortal Valor chronicles these timeless heroes' life journeys through all the pain and struggle until their ultimate triumphs. I hope you pick up the new paperback version, hardcover or audiobook, available in stores and online.
Ghost Carrier, They Died to Fight Another Day. Written by Robert Child. Narrated by Kirk Winkler. Kalaupapa Peninsula. Admiral Mullenix paced back and forth in his shelter. Raging storm, raging storm. Well, it will give us some cover to move at least. Right, Joe said as Theo joined him in the Admiral's shelter. Theo, you have to pass the word to the men about this. We have 3 days before H-hour to get all of us home. Get right on it, Mullenix ordered. We have to get everyone on the same page and fast. Theo bolted from the shelter while Joe remained. Did this padre tell you how we were going to break through the prison gates? No, sir. Did he tell you which way we should go if we do? No, sir. So we're just supposed to gather in a circle, look to the heavens, sing Kumbaya, and hope for the best? Father Damien said we have always held the power to return home. Mullenix grunted and paced across the shelter, thinking about his captors. These Japs, they react on a dime. They're jumpy, and I'm not sure why. Maybe they know something we don't, Joe said. Perhaps. Maybe we can use what we know against them. Joe nodded. They travel and react in mass. If we could create a big enough diversion to distract their attention, maybe we've got a chance. We don't have any explosives, so that's out. Joe looked away into the distance. He was forming an idea. If you got something cooking, Rusk, spill it. The lepers. We're not the only ones on this island. They're here too. Sailor, I'm not following you. A distraction. The lepers could provide the distraction. We've never even seen one, and if I'm not mistaken, don't they have something called leprosy, which is highly contagious and will kill us all? We don't want to get near them. Right, but the leper colony is the only thing on this island that the Japs fear. That's why they all wear the masks. They fear exposure. Mullenix nodded, still unsure where Joe was going with this. Father Damien said, overcome your fear and you will return home. We fear the lepers, but if we can move through that and ask them to help us by coming here, then we will have demonstrated our faith. Mullenix nodded, seeing the logic. And their arrival would scare the living crap out of the Japs and certainly be a diversion, Joe continued. What about the leprosy? Maybe the rainstorm will dampen exposure. It's a chance. Mullenix thought a moment. It was a chance, and a damn good diversion if it worked. But, Rusk, how the hell are we going to get the lepers to come here? Send out an all-points bulletin? Call them on the telephone? Father Damien said he would return to guide final preparations. I can explain our plan. He could get word to the lepers. Mullenix still believed there was a danger. Can Father Damien protect the men from contracting leprosy? Joe's face went blank. He didn't have an answer. Crestwood Avenue, Dayton, Ohio. Maria was deep in her trance, holding Frank's watch. Her head was moving around in a circular motion. The vortex is opening, growing stronger. My guides are here. They are saying we must pray. Frank and Katie bowed their heads. This was something new. They had not prayed at any of the other sessions. This situation is receiving divine assistance. I am told a saint has become directly involved and is there with your father and the others." Frank looked at Katie, then back to Maria. "A saint? Which saint?" "I am being told it would not serve you to possess that information. Only know it means the very hand of God is involved." Maria then turned directly to Frank with her eyes wide. "You must prepare yourself. Once the dimensional door has opened, your life will be forever changed. I cannot say how or in what way, but if we are successful at the conclusion of your father's transition, you too will have transitioned. Everything in your life will be impacted, everything. You may not live in Dayton, you may not have the same job, and you may not have even married the same woman." Maria looked at Katie. "Do you accept this, Frank? Do you accept that once the transition completes, it cannot be reversed?" Frank paused and looked over at Katie. A warm smile appeared on her face. The love she held for this man since the day they first met now filled her watering eyes. "I will always love you, Frank, no matter what happens. Your dad needs you. You have come so far, you have to save him." Frank exhaled and returned Katie's warm smile. He turned to Maria. "I accept it." "Then let us begin." Kalaupapa Peninsula. Theo and Joe stood together in the pen watching the gathering storm clouds in the east, far out to sea. "It's coming," Theo whispered, shaking his head. "How are we going to know it's time?" "Father Damien appeared to me again last night, just like he said he would. I told him our plan. He already knew what we had in mind. He said we had faced our fears and that we would know it was time upon the arrival of his flock." Theo nodded. "Oh, and he added a last thing before he disappeared. He told me his full name. It is Saint Damien de Voister of Molokai." Theo's eyes widened. "Saint?" "That's right, Theo, Saint." Theo's confidence lifted a moment, then he looked down and studied the ground. "I still don't get it. Why those lepers want to help us? We don't mean nothing to them." "Saint Damien said it was an opportunity to serve, and for that they will be rewarded many times over." "Rewarded?" "That's what he said. He said we have moved through our fears, and they are about to conquer theirs. It is a holy exchange." Fierce lightning flashes 2 miles out to sea illuminated the skies and reflected on both Joe and Theo's faces. A deafening crash of thunder followed. The gray-green angry seas surged and convulsed into 20-foot swells as the black clouds descended, blotting out the moon. A sudden, intense, pelting rain made remaining outdoors unbearable for prisoners and their captors alike. The fury and sound of the storm was formidable. Rain striking the ground sounded like one long continuous hiss, broken only by the electric crackle of lightning and the crash of thunder. Mother Nature was flexing her muscles and showcasing her might. The admiral assigned squad leaders to groups of the men. He estimated the remaining number of prisoners to be perhaps 500 men. Mullenix was treating this as an infantry attack, not that he and his men had had any experience with that. Their objective was to scale the prison gate and break out of their confinement. Men would stack on top of each other, building a human ladder to freedom. He knew there would be hand-to-hand combat with the Japanese, and men would die. His men had torn sheets and wound canvas into long strips to strangle any Japanese soldier who tried to stop them. Mullenix had no idea what the lepers were going to do. For that matter, he had no idea what he and his men would do once outside the prison gate. He had just told his men he would see them on the beach. 2 miles away. In the inky darkness across the rain-swept, craggy landscape, an enormous dark mass undulated, moving in unison with deliberate purpose and pace. The amassed army was 300 strong. Their very existence inspired visions of terror. An electric bolt lit up the sky, revealing that many soldiers in this advancing force shouldered a long club. Others carried ropes and some had axes, but more importantly, they had a mission. The lepers of Molokai had been quite literally dumped on the Kalaupapa Peninsula from across the territory of Hawaii. They had lived as outcasts for 75 years. Men, women, and children had been dragged from their homes and banished to the peninsula on Molokai, never to see their families again. The 7 decades of isolation had cemented their unbreakable bond and fueled a festering, pent-up rage. Kikoa Manuiki led this army of the damned. Dragged from his home at 5 years old, Kikoa, now 22, was a natural leader with a warrior's heart. He had devised a plan that had the lepers separating into 2 groups as they neared the prison gates. With donkeys as strong as oxen in tow, they would approach from the north and south, tie ropes around the prison fence posts, and set the animals off in opposite directions to tear down the fences. The lepers had never come together with such singular purpose before. Spurred on by humiliation and fueled by hatred, they planned to unleash their own brand of hell upon the Japanese. Fear had always stopped them from fighting back, but now fear had become their weapon of choice. Joe lingered in his shelter, listening to the pounding rain and the thunder. He could feel freedom was close. "Keiho! Keiho! Keiho!" screamed a mask-wearing Japanese guard from the tower at the front gate of the pen. The guard watched in horror with disbelieving eyes as the large mass of lepers closed in on the prison pen from all directions. His eyes widened into terror-stricken panic as he raised his bolt-action Arisaka rifle and fired wildly into the army. The lepers were not slow to step. Joe emerged from his shelter into the chaos and saw the Japanese prison guards running in every which direction, shouting incoherent curses in disbelief. "To the gate!" he heard Admiral Mullinex order the mass of running men as the rain continued to pound. The plan, Joe remembered, was simply to scale the gate in the expected confusion, as they had no idea what the lepers were planning to do. The leper army, now split into 2 groups outside the pen, began banging on the fence with their clubs. Lepers on the front lines, hacking the wire with axes, were getting shot down by the terrified Japanese attempting to make a stand. Bullets ripped into leper bodies and rivers of blood gushed. The Japanese, who had not already fled in terror, formed firing lines facing both groups of lepers outside the pen. Many of their rain-soaked rifles, however, began to jam. Some then fastened their bayonets and stabbed at the lepers through the wire. Joe, meeting up with the Admiral, saw the heroism displayed by the lepers on the front lines. His immediate thoughts were verbalized perfectly by the Admiral. "We need to help those guys," the Admiral shouted. Theo, now next to Joe along with hundreds of fellow prisoners, did not hesitate as they charged forward to attack the disintegrating Japanese line from behind. The Japanese line had crumbled and had become a disorganized melee. Bayonets stabbing through the wire were knocked aside by the lepers' heavy axes and clubs. Joe and the other men, armed only with ropes, rolled up canvas, and their fists overtook the Japanese line, which was now pinned between the lepers at the prison fence and 500 enraged American prisoners. Joe looked over at Theo during the intense hand-to-hand combat as the big man took distinct pleasure in crushing the windpipe of a particular guard, strangling him far past dead. Joe's adrenaline pumped, and mysteriously his strength returned as he cornered one scrawny guard and trapped him against the fence. The guard slashed at Joe with the tip of his bayonet as Joe danced clear of the blade. Twisting his knotted rope, Joe knew that if he could knock the rifle away, this little piece of shit was as good as in the grave. A guttural rhythmic sound suddenly erupted from the massed leper army outside the fence. Joe wasn't sure if it was a war cry or if it was even English, but it made his blood run instantly cold. "Hookee! Hookee! Hookee!" they repeated, their chant slow and deliberate. The scrawny guard in front of Joe turned back to the sound for an instant, and that was all the time Joe needed. He rushed the soldier, pinning him against the fence, and knocked away his weapon. As Joe fumbled with his rope, pinning the squirming soldier with his arm and elbow, the soldier was able to grab his dagger. In close combat, the guard started to slash at Joe with the knife. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Joe saw a disfigured young leper approaching them from outside the pen. Kikyo Manuiki raised both of his strong hands and reached them through the opening in the fence. He wrapped them around the soldier's neck and pulled his body in tight against the fence. Kikyo then pulled his entire body hard to the right in a twist, instantly breaking the Japanese soldier's neck. As the guard slid down the fence to the ground, Joe looked across at Kikyo and nodded, "Thanks." At that moment, the north and south walls of the pen ripped open and came down, as the massed leper army continued to chant, "Hookee! Hookee! Hookee!" and the oxen-like donkeys struggled forward. "I am Kikyo Manuiki, leader of these forces," the leper commander informed Joe. "Pleased to assist you." But the hand-to-hand fight had not ended with the walls coming down. Men were still kicking, scratching, and gouging the remaining Japanese guards for their very lives. All Joe could think of were the Admiral's orders to meet at the beach, but he had lost track of Theo. Had he already gotten down to the beach? Where was the Admiral? Joe started to push his way toward the open sides of the pen to freedom. He saw Theo 20 yards away, grappling with a particularly big Japanese guard. Theo had the end of the soldier's rifle, but the guard wasn't letting go as they wrestled back and forth. Joe shouted, "Theo!" as the hero gunner of Pearl Harbor finally slammed the big soldier to the ground and jumped with all his 290 pounds on the man's back. Joe winced as he heard the soldier's vertebrae shatter, even at a distance away. Theo turned to see Joe, and a reassuring smile crossed his face as he stepped off the crushed man. He started walking toward Joe, waving. With Theo about 20 feet away, Joe's vision of the scene transitioned into slow motion. Out of the corner of Joe's eye, he saw a rushing, crouching, bayonet-wielding guard behind Theo with his blade thrust forward. In the instant he heard his words leave his mouth, "Theo, behind you!" Joe saw the 20-inch-long razor-sharp bayonet blade emerge from the center of Theo's chest. Theo stopped cold, his eyes wide and surprised as he looked down at the gushing red blood and blade protruding from his heart. Frozen in horror, Joe could not move as the soldier shouted a blood-curdling battle scream and twisted the bayonet hard in Theo's chest. It was the finishing death strike. Theo's mouth opened wide in a silent gasp as his eyes rolled back and the big man fell forward. His lifeless body slammed against the guard hard with the base of the bayonet still protruding from his back. Joe rushed to his friend on the ground as the guard raced off. Kneeling in the mud under the pounding rain, Joe slid the blade out of Theo's body and flung it aside. He then struggled to roll Theo over on his back. Choking back tears, Joe said his goodbye. "I'll never forget you, never. You saved my life. Oh, Jesus Christ, Theo!" Joe screamed as he was overcome. After a moment, Joe felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned and looked up through the rain to see the Admiral. "Rusk, we gotta move, now." "Yes, sir," Joe whispered as he turned back to his friend and gently lifted Theo's head to remove his dog tags. Putting Theo's chain around his own neck, he said, People are gonna know this man lived and what he did for me, for us.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Ghost Carrier, our 15-part alternative history series. Join us next time for another installment. This story has been adapted from my book, Ghost Carrier. You can purchase the full version in paperback, Kindle, or audiobook from the links in this episode's description. And if you like what you hear, leave a review or a rating, or just click the follow button. I'm Robert Child, and this has been Ghost Carrier, only on Point of the Spear.
Music licensed from audioblocks.com. Point of the Spear is produced by RSC Media Group.